everybody's happy. I call this meeting of the workshop, March 28, 2022, to order at this time. On the agenda for action, we will first have an appointment to fill the vacancy of Planning and Development in the Planning and Development Department. Mr. Mosier, do you have a motion?
I make a motion for hiring of Savannah to fill Ashley's position.
Okay.
Third.
Motion been made and second. Any discussion?
Savannah's here tonight. I'd like to introduce
Okay.
her.
Stand up and say hello to everybody.
Hello everyone, I'm Savannah. Nice to meet y'all.
All right.
Welcome aboard.
Frank.
That's a crazy bunch, not including us. But that's a crazy bunch you're gonna have to work with, right? Right, Eddie?
Savannah Frank.
She's got an inspection coming.
Yeah.
That'll work.
But it's good to have you as an employee of City of Sweetwater.
Thank you, I'm glad to be here.
All in favor? Did we did vote?
Had a motion and a second and a discussion.
So, yeah. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Motion does carry. Also, as noted in our last meeting, we have rebid the train car lift due to issues on the last bidder, not including installation, and the state of Tennessee required a licensed installer to do that too. So we received one bid from United Elevator in Knoxville, which I will open the bid at this time. Already open, Jessica, open it up. The final bid, I won't go over all the platform and all of that. It's here if you'd like to see it, but it's pretty well. Looks like to me that everything has been put down. $26,940. $26,940.
Okay, so just as an overview on this is the train car grant. We do pay a 10% match on this grant. It's through the Tourism Enhancement Fund at the state of Tennessee. We have a $70,000 grant. We've spent approximately $10,000 so far. So we have a $60,000 balance right now. The bid that we opened before at $16,000 and change did not include installation, nor did it meet codes for the state of Tennessee. So that's why we had to rebid. Apparently, for the height and to meet the state code, it has to be an enclosed elevator lift. So it's like an elevator on the end of the train car, is basically what it'll be. So that's our option. The other option we've discussed is not doing a lift at all and building a ramp. It does have to be, I want to say 52 inches, maybe. That's the amount of distance we have to be able to lift someone. So that ramp's going to have to be pretty long to, it may not cover a whole side of the train car, but it would probably come pretty close. The only thing I would ask if we end up deciding to do a ramp instead is that it be a metal one or something that blends in well with the train car, because even though we've always called the railroad side the back side of the train car, that's now the visitor center side. So all the visitors that are coming in see that side. We have to make it ADA accessible. That was part of the grant that we put in, was to make it ADA accessible. So we have to do either the elevator or the ramp, one or the other. This is a lot higher than what we originally thought it was going to be, but the very first time when Chuck Whitehead was here and got quotes, it was $23,000. So that's why we looked for other vendors. So this isn't quite as bad as I guess it could have been, considering all the price increases. We do still have budget for it, but I'll kind of let you all think about whether you want to. We can vote on it. I did advertise it to be voted on. If you feel comfortable with it, we can go ahead and do it. Or if you want to talk about a ramp instead, we can do that too.
Is this electric or hydraulic?
Lamar, I racked my brain for every question y'all had asked me tonight, and I did not come up with that one.
Probably electric.
The thing about a ramp is if we're rising 52 inches, then your ramp at a minimum has to be 52 feet long. at 52 feet long, it rises more than 30, therefore you have to add 5 feet to the middle because you've got to have a landing. So there goes 52 feet, 57 feet. There has to be 5 feet at the bottom and 5 feet at the top. So therefore you add another 5 feet. So right now, you're talking about a ramp that has to be a minimum 4 feet wide and 62 feet long. Okay?
It's electric.
Don't make it straight in with it.
So, with that being said, 62 feet of pressure treated material, 4 feet wide and that long, plus labor, that's something to think about.
That's
I'll
probably
tell you what, being a cripple, you won't get to where you're going as easy as you can.
I would recommend, if nothing else, one, ease of access, the lift. Number two, we worked really hard on making that something special. We don't wanna my opinion, on one vote, we don't wanna wrap it in a 62-foot long ramp. Number three, just the cost alone to build something is gonna be pretty close.
They did include some pictures if you want to kind of see what it looks like.
You said that fully enclosed, didn't you?
Yeah.
Sammy, if we talked about that over a period, we accepted the grant with the proposal that it would cost us $23,000. So we're not talking about a $10,000 increase,
Right.
we're talking about $3,000. The $3,000 time we build it out of steel and time we get it painted, we'll have more than that, way more than that in it.
It would be my recommendation to move forward and use the grant money. Just the logistics of everything else that you would have to do.
I've got a question. I don't, and this, I guess, is for the fire chief. Life safety code not going to require an alternate manner of egress in the event of a fire other than an elevator?
You will have one, there's an opening on the other end. Now, it doesn't have to, only one of them has to be ADA accessible. The other one just has to be an escape. There's a door on each end, is there not?
So if there's somebody disabled on the end,
They gonna get thrown out.
you shove them out the door. Okay.
Occupancy level too.
Yeah, and it's small enough, it's
Well,
not.
that's, I didn't know those. That's why I
So
was
I
asking.
was gonna say, unless we try to cram, which we shouldn't, 50 or 49 people can egress with one. Have one egress versus two. You put 50 in there, you gotta have two, but the square footage of that
It's not.
should not exceed that 49 occupancy level.
Which end would this go on?
It goes on the end closer to the Scruggs building, so if you're looking at the train car from Main Street, it would be on the right side. Left side,
The other right.
Other
left
right.
side.
Have you gotta figure out how we wanna attach
On
to
the
the train
paperwork
car
you got.
itself? I mean, have they seen the specs on
Their
the-
price includes the installation, so they do have to get it installed to where there's no, leaking or
That
anything
thing's
like
got
that.
some kind
What
of
about the upkeep on it?
It's a good question. I mean, I know several of the schools have lifts similar to this, so we could probably ask them what kind of maintenance and stuff they have. And I think they do have a warranty on it for a certain amount of
A lot of
time.
elevators have to have at least a yearly
Annual inspection.
inspection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is probably true. We probably are gonna have
Yeah,
to
they,
do
yeah,
that.
they'll have it.
So it's a 1-year warranty. And that does include any callbacks or issues. That's parts and labor on the 1 year. I'd say you're right though, Stockton. I bet we will have to have an annual elevator
Probably
inspection.
the state line.
Yeah, it'll fall under any elevator. Inspection.
usually a permit number attached inside.
They do include quarterly visits the first year, just to kind of look at it and make sure everything's operating like it should be and test it and things like that, so that's included in the price.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
Make a motion for approval of the bid and acceptance.
Second? Any more discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed likewise, motion carries. That workshop discussion, good to have Mitch Loomis here to give us an update on the home grant.
Ready?
Okay.
Yeah, we, of course, we bid out the, potentially go with the stick building, as you realize, and we knew it was gonna be high, but we didn't realize, I guess, that high, 114,000. In the meantime, you know, talking to Jessica and Sonia, and we basically, then we found out we could actually put in a mobile home, and we were probably looking at about 85,000 for the double wide, and we've actually put in, on that street, of course, one guy actually got insurance on his, so there's already a new double wide on that one street. And then there's these two stick buildings, and she would be a double wide. So I don't think it would take away from the neighborhood at all. And we have roughly about $98,000, and there could be some up a little bit more, and 13,000 of it for demolition. And we're estimating maybe $4,000 or $5,000 for. We'll have to get somebody to take that house out, because the mobile home place won't do that. I mean, so we'll end up having to go out for bids on that. So, because they're probably not gonna let us call that professional services. They're probably gonna say, no, you gotta go out for bids, or at least quotes. You might be able, you'll probably get by with quotes, because I think you're allowed quotes.
So you think we're in the right numbers?
Yeah, no, I think we're gonna be good on that, and then John had said that we'll be fine with the 28 by 48, it'll meet all the planning setbacks and all that. And we're hoping, and it looks like we might have a little bit extra money that we can help the other one lady, she, for an HVAC or something.
She is slated for a rehab. Her husband built the house and she does not want a new home, but she does have some repairs that can be made, so that might leave enough extra. Because we're supposed to do 8 homes with this $525,000, so I think that'll put us to where we actually do what we're supposed to do.
And the one we didn't have to touch because of the insurance, but it was on our list, so
Yeah,
we
that was
counted it somewhere. But, yeah, so we're hoping we might have a little bit of extra money to take care of that lady, like you said, with an HVAC or something, we don't know exactly what yet. But
Okay.
the next thing we need to do, we need to run the advertisement, and, we can run it in the Buzz, and I can actually get it in the Buzz tomorrow, or at least by, what is today's Monday, Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday or Wednesday at the latest, or we can run it in the other paper. It's whatever y'all wanna do, it doesn't matter.
Is everyone okay with rebidding this though as a mobile home?
I mean, as long as it meets the
Yeah, we've already got approval from the state, we already, sent the plans and specs, kinda said, here's what we wanna do, and they already came back and said, yeah, that's fine, go ahead and do it. So we can read that, but we do have to run that notice. And then, in opening it up, you always like to open it up, before your council meeting, or how?
Sometimes we do open by committee just so we can look at all those specs.
And
Since
we
it's a
can do
home,
that.
there's a lot of stuff in it. So, I mean, typically the committee's John, me, and you, and I think
Okay.
Sonya's on that committee too.
Okay.
So if y'all are okay with that, we'll advertise to open it like a week before our next meeting. We'll go through it and have the details and make a recommendation about the bids.
Because once we put it in the paper, we've got to count 15 days and then open the meeting, so it's almost like 17 days, it's just required.
So this will probably be, we could do a call meeting on April 25th, but I bet it'll be the May meeting, which I think is May 2nd.
Yeah, and I don't think that's good. So we'll plan on opening up bids on May the 2nd. I mean, potentially awarding bids on May the 2nd.
Thank you, Mitch.
All right.
And thank you, John, for finding the mobile home with the setbacks.
Yeah, definitely.
Was that a new home, Sean?
It is, Monroe County Mobile Homes, who I spoke with, it's a 28 by 48 mobile home, it's new, it will be, have a stove and a fridge, heat pump, dishwasher, so it comes furnished, which will obviously be helpful. So, yeah, 85,000 plus they anticipated about $7,000 in block work to put the foundation under it, so for about 92 grand, it's fully furnished new home. And it does fit all the requirements, setbacks.
Okay, good job. Thank you, Mitch. If you need to leave, Mitch.
Okay, yeah. Go run the ball.
Yeah. Good to have you.
See you guys later, appreciate it.
Okay, it's good to have you. Okay, next on the agenda with discussion of a community center. It's been in the works now. We've talked about it for almost 2 years. Of course, COVID hit. We've had a couple of 30 community center committee meetings. Buster serves on it. Sam, do you serve on it? I believe you do. And Lamar. And with things trying to get back to normal now and things getting back in shape, we're in good shape. And what worries me, if we sit on this much longer, the interest rates is going to go through the ceiling. So I would like to get this going. And Sam, what all do we need to do to hire you as a, if this passes? First of all, does anybody have any problem? It seems like we did have no problem before building a community center for the City of Sweetwater kids. Does anybody have a problem with voting on it to go ahead and start the process?
One of my questions or recommendation is, I know we've met several times before, but I think kind of in getting the information out there, you and I had talked about doing some preliminary plans. I think for budgeting purposes, kind of in the environment that we're at right now, we could, within the next 6 to 8 weeks, we could have 2 options pulled together, possibly looking at the existing SUV warehouse as an option that's been in discussion with the committee, as well as the site that's over at the sports complex. And I think what we could do is, in looking at those 2 basically proposals or examples, is make a list of the pros and the cons of both of those individual sites through this preliminary planning, and then that way kind of bring it back to the committee and move forward. One of the things, there's a couple things that will help do. One, whenever we move forward with the full set of construction documents, it will help engineering and civil refine their costs to know what type of building, structure, and site conditions that they will have. So if we're moving forward with this, we can set it within our schedule to meet that next 6 to 8 weeks and have it set up a interim committee meeting and get input before we finalize those preliminary. But that way it would give us options on moving forward.
That's good.
Yep.
Sam, I was thinking about this today, with Red's Day coming on, and one of those. I don't know what we talked about in the meeting, but looks to me like we're going to have to plan this thing for the future, not right now.
Sure.
They people moving in here every day.
Sure.
Most of them come from California, New York.
Well, that's the thing about it. It is for the future. I think we need a community center not only to have the basketball court, meeting rooms, walking trail, but also as a auditorium. That we can have a stage area where we can actually have an auditorium rather than making the schools, especially our city school system, don't want you to use their auditorium.
Well, one of the things that working with these preliminaries will allow us to do is we can look at an array of program spaces, and we can either size up or size down based on where that end square footage falls within. And with the preliminary plan, I mean, we could very easily, at the two sites, look at a phasing option too. And that way, in looking at a phasing option, you start with a set plan, but if we grow as fast as we anticipate, we could grow that center. So looking at those preliminary options, we could get more or less a base program, base footprint, and get it started, and then grow that site, that building, as the city grows. Because we all know one of the pitfalls, especially with community type buildings, as communities grow, you've locked yourself into a footprint that can't be changed. So I think that's something we really need to look at and focus as well.
Yeah, but what does, I mean, I know there's a lot of people moving in, and these people have been moving in for the last 2 years and still are, but what does that have to do with the community center being built to start with? I mean, we've got to have a starting point.
I agree, and that's what I'm saying. That's just, in building this program, that could be another element or another question that we answer through these preliminary proposals.
You're talking about adding,
Yeah, just at least have a game plan set that, for instance, we get in here and we see, we're gonna need 5 courts. Where would you put those? It's just an example of something that can be done, can be looked at, can be planned with this particular approach. It gives us, it's big enough for a court, but it wouldn't be big enough for meeting rooms or an auditorium. But what we would love to do is vet the possibilities of that particular building and that particular site. And at this point, in doing that, we know exactly where that square footage sits, and that would be part of the selection approach of what could be built or could not be built at that particular site.
is there enough room there around it or add on?
That's the other thing that we've got to look at, and we'll pull boundary lines, tax records, setbacks, etc., and look at those 2 options. But I think giving the city options and different approaches, I think, would be advantageous for the project.
Everybody,
Well, I mean, who's to say that either of those options would be big enough to plan for the future? I mean, there may have to be numbers ran that, because I know this year alone, what I've been told, Tim could probably tell me more. We have more kids in sports this year than we've had in how long?
Thanks more for kids playing sports probably in the history of Sweetwater this year.
So
It's everybody.
that within itself, Alan, you bring up the third point and the third option, and with that development and footprint, then we can calculate from the square footage, just like we were talking about with the train car, is you got X square footage, that square footage will only accommodate X number of people. Therefore, if those 2 sites don't meet that draw or that need, then that within itself would answer a question that we may need a new site. But until we run those numbers, do those layouts, and look at each one of those items, it's a preliminary process that needs to happen. And I think we can get there from here. It's just, you say go and we'll go. And within 6 to 8 weeks, we'll have, I mean, in the interim, I think we set up another committee meeting for discussion and hit those target dates. So before the new fiscal year, we can have some options to look at.
I know, utilities got that blue building, but the property we used to have with the old fire department, have we still got that, or did it go with that building when they built that project?
That's
Buster may know.
where the street and the part of the building is. Where across that street was Jacob's building, the houses, but on this side, where the fire hall was, it was in Jacob's building that Jacob used to have on the right-hand side where the, train, where the depot is.
It sits right there
Yeah.
where the depot sits now.
Yeah,
In short,
but I just throw in this on the thing, and as far as dealing, if I missed the meeting, it's my fault. But, I think we need to do some hard thinking about parking.
About what?
I don't care what you say about how big the town is and what's gonna grow. We got parking out there now, out the yin yang, and nobody can get in, and people griping about having to walk all the way from the softball complex to get across the road. All you gotta do is just drive out there.
well, Buster, that's definitely one thing that we'll look at in the overall preliminary, not just the building itself, but the entire site.
Yeah.
We will look at that, but Bill Wayne, to answer your question, right now, I don't know, but that's one of the things that we'll pull with the tax maps and boundaries, and at least do that preliminary layout.
Have you thought about a seat capacity, just in normal discussions?
Nothing has been mentioned, however, the Broad Street is like 515, and we know the footprint of what that takes up, which is pretty substantial.
515, that's not big enough, is it?
No. And I make that point to say, we know the footprint that takes up, and if you wanna double that, you're gonna double the square footage. So, what we've gotta do is look at these potential locations and see what can or cannot fit, and then we'll have to look at a third option if they don't fit within those parameters and setbacks.
Well, I've got it in my mind, and I'm not on the committee, but just thinking about it, 1,500 seats. And the reason why I say that is because it's hard to watch. I sat on the school board 20-something years, and it's hard to watch them let people put on programs or the school put on programs, and people get turned away because there's nowhere to sit. When you fill up what they can stand around in, there's nowhere, nobody to go. And usually when they have their spring awards and stuff they give out of park, it's usually around full. So that just makes.
Well, they've moved that, I think, to junior high now. Gym.
Yeah.
I think they've moved that to the gym rather than the auditorium.
I think way back when, we looked at a 30% increase when Broad Street was built from the original. And obviously, we've grown since then, over the last almost 10 years.
Well, it sounds to me like with everything that we would like to have, with the auditorium and the ball courts, and I think we've mentioned having volleyball in there at one time and meeting rooms and stuff. I don't know that either one of those sites would hold what we're gonna need, so I think a third option is definitely to be looked at, because we don't want it to have, and I'm all for it, community center, I love it. But we don't want it to have a negative impact on what we're already doing. The parking, like Buster was talking about, or traffic flow, or safety of our citizens. So, I mean,
I think once we pull the the tax maps and boundaries and surveys, we'll know really quick what it can or cannot hold, which that'll be the very first thing that we look at with the initial meeting is what's the property that we have to work with.
You're gonna take care of that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mayor, I heard you make a comment a while ago. The school didn't much like us using their facilities, or anybody. I think they did have a schedule they charged people. But they didn't have any problem coming in here and asking us for $1 million when they built that last building up there. So I don't know, they don't need to get too fancy about it.
Yeah. Okay, is everybody on board with this, with what Sam, I think I'd like to have a motion in a second that we let Sam pursue this for the record.
I make a motion, Sam, be in charge of this project.
Second.
Motion made second. Sam,
I'm gonna recuse myself from any voting on this.
Okay, all right. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Hughes?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Aye.
Commissioner West? Commissioner Stockton?
Okay, good, all 100%. Thank you. Next, we will have the budget review. In your package, you have a cover letter that summarizes the draft. I have proposed a 3% cost of living raise for all employees, no increase in garbage fees or property taxes, and the budget is balanced without using any fund balance. The recorder will now review the proposed budget, and if we have any questions on it, well, we can talk about it.
Hopefully these slides will answer most of any questions that you might have. Okay, so this is kind of our budget calendar, just an overview of the dates. We get to discuss it tonight, we can discuss it April 4th, and we can discuss it April 25th. So you've got 3 options to discuss it, add to it, do whatever you need to do. First reading, I'm asking you to pass it on May 2nd for first reading. And in that meeting, that should really be our last time to make changes, because after that meeting, I'll do the public notice that goes out to the newspaper. We can technically, by law, still change it after the public notice. I just think for transparency's sake, it's always better if we get it changed before we send that public notice out. So the public notice would then run on May 11th. On May 23rd, we'd have another opportunity for workshop discussion, and the Board of Education will probably be presenting their budget that meeting. On June 6th, we would have a public hearing and the second and final reading if it's ready. If for some reason we couldn't pass it June 6th, we can pass it June 27th, and all of that would keep us in line with what the state requirements are. So just an overview, I'm going to tell you everything major that's changed in this budget, but there could be smaller things that aren't mentioned. So we're going to start with revenues in the general fund. I've done a conservative estimate. You all know me, I'm never going to overestimate revenues if I can help it. So sales tax, I left it at what our June 2021 actuals were. So that means the sales tax amount that actually came in last year is what I'm budgeting for next year, even though we've seen I want to say a 10% increase this year probably. We're probably going to come in over budget, having more revenue than expected because of sales tax this year. I expect that to continue next year, but just in case, we're using last year's actuals as our sales tax. Just to point out again, sales tax is our #1 revenue, which is a long-term goal we set for ourselves several years ago, that we wanted to have enough businesses and tourism that we would have sales tax as our #1 revenue instead of putting it on the backs of property tax owners, and we are still consistently doing that.
Question. Is the Red Stag property, are they paying tax on that now?
So Red Stag came in and very joyfully paid their property taxes this year, and they said with a big smile, this is why I love these people, they said with a big smile, "We hope this is the smallest check we ever give you." I want them to pay taxes every day. They're the nicest people ever. So yes, they did pay, but of course it's still Greenbelt right now. Next year on the 2022 tax roll, there'll be some development, but we won't see the full benefit of those revenues for probably another year. So it'll probably be 2023 before we see it.
Why would it still be Greenbelt when it changes hands?
So it's whoever is the property owner effective January first, and then once it starts developing, they pay rollback taxes. So they did add a little amount of rollback taxes this year for where it was developed, but since it was only developed part of the year, they didn't actually break ground until part of the year. It'll be next year before we see it. But it's prorated for the amount of time that they had it under development versus it just being agriculture.
Sorry for being negative.
No, that's a very good question.
But the good thing about that is, next year at this time, they could be 4 buildings sitting out there, and that's $5 million
Yeah.
a building, so.
And this budget does not include any estimated revenue from Red Stag or any of the other buildings coming in that we already know about. It doesn't include any revenue from scooters or any of the new businesses. This is just using last year's numbers. So we, like I said, I'm trying to be conservative on purpose. I don't want to overestimate the revenues.
I'm not trying to fee grab nobody, but I assume it's still the county makes these estimates on the taxes for all the property. Have we got anybody in Monroe County that can estimate what they're putting up out there?
So the good thing about, well, first of all, Marcia is an excellent assessor, and I very rarely even have to call her about anything because she has professional assessors that come in and look at things. But the good thing about this new construction is that it's based off their permit that they pulled. So what they actually pay their contractor to construct it is how they use to calculate the assessment the first time. So usually they start with a pretty good base. Where it gets a little off is 5, 10, 15 years down the road if nobody comes on site to do a reappraisal. With Red Stag, you're never gonna have to worry about that because someone is always gonna be on site looking at that reappraisal because it's such a huge, your top 10 taxpayers, usually you get reassessed every 5 years because they're looking at that. We even have to report it in our audit who our top 10 property taxpayers are. So they always get scrutinized. So usually it's a pretty safe bet that their value on a building that large stays where it needs to be.
They estimate, Bill, within 10 years when it's completed, our tax revenue on property tax alone will be $1.5 million. And
That's good to hear.
that's a fourth of what we get now on everything. So it's gonna be good down the road for somebody.
Well, I told Debbie, you know, when I, and a lot of us, when we grew up, the boys, the only place we had work around here, Carol and Sunil. Look what the future's got to work at. It's gonna be amazing.
And what I like about Red Stag too, that we don't hear a lot of talk, we talked about it, the growth a while ago. Red Stag is a kind of a regional thing, from McMinn County and all around, not just here in Sweetwater. So you're right, people are moving in, I mean, you know, but I think that's beginning to decease a little bit. It's kind of bearing down from what I've talked to some of the realtors, until apartment units are going to be built or housing units. And we've got people right now that behind Burger King, 200 houses, you know, that's like family of 4, that's 800 more people in here. So,
And that's not counting the other stuff.
no. Sorry, Tess, go ahead.
No, you're fine. So that's sales tax and property tax. I'm happy to talk about any other revenue estimates, but basically overall, I'm only proposing a 1.3% increase in revenue. Again, I think it's gonna be more than that, but I'd rather underestimate than overestimate. So on expenditures, which is probably the thing we're concerned with most, overall employee expenditures, so the mayor's proposed budget in your blue folders proposes a 3% cost of living adjustment for all employees, and we usually do that for all full-time employees and our regular part-time employees. So it's not seasonal staff, but like janitorial staff, visitor center staff, they also get that same cost of living adjustment each year. It includes a proposal to increase the Christmas bonus to $500 for full-time employees and $300 for regular part-time employees and our officials. There's not an increase in health, dental, or vision, and that is because Cigna and Blue Cross Blue Shield have already agreed to sign us at the same rate again. So we will not have to have an extra meeting in May to talk about health insurance options. Can I get an amen? The very last page of the blue folder has the retirement rate. It's got the actuarial study. They're recommending we go to at least 2.99%. I have run the budget with 5% in there because the last several years we've tried to be a little bit above what the actuary has recommended. Last year it was less than 1% and we paid in 3%. This year, I think we need to raise it to 5 because the economy wasn't so great last year as far as earnings on investments. They didn't earn the 6.75 or whatever it is they try to estimate each year for earnings. So they have given us an unfunded pension liability, which, you know, we've had several years without an unfunded pension liability, which has been great. It's only $26,000. So going to 5% should net us an extra $60-some thousand into the, not including investments, into the, you know, what we pay in, not including the investment earnings that's on it. So I think if we would do 5%, we'd get rid of that unfunded pension liability and be back ahead again. Stockton, do you have a
That's
question?
what I was gonna say, aren't we 100% funded now?
We are, except for that $26,000. So because,
I think we need to stay there.
yeah, so 5% is what I've included in the budget. We can discuss that, but I do have to, once we make a decision, I've got to sign it and send it back into TCRS. It does also affect the schools, their non-certified positions.
Other comment I got, Sweetwater Utilities a few years ago, and we didn't realize this until it was too late, but we were just 30-something% funded. That cost them a bunch of money, a whole bunch. We're 96% now.
Yeah.
That's when everybody was taking, and I sat in on that meeting too, and I think they stopped it, was taking the lump sum out.
Retiring, taking the lump sum will have to be stopped.
Yeah, and also that will be reviewed. Richard Hill is coming to go over our audit from June 30th of last year. He can answer questions about the pension liability for the utility board, but you'll be able to, you can see in the audit where they've made a huge stride. Like there's hardly any unfunded pension liability more, which is good for us too, because ultimately we're on the line for their debt.
You know, we've got basically the same amount of employees on this side of the street as theirs. And, our actual payment this year is gonna be over $300,000. I don't know how much yours is.
It's pretty close to
Is it
$300,000.
comparable to the?
Yeah, and Eric, when he first became general manager, he did actually compare their pension plan to the city's TCRS plan. And because their pension plan actually pays out like 1% more than what the city's plan does to retirees, he can't switch to the city's plan. So they could do it starting fresh with new hires, but it wasn't an option because you're not allowed to decrease the benefit to the employees.
Well, what we done, we, stopped that plan and put it into a 401
Yeah.
fund.
Yeah, which means the new hires in the utility board have a 401k, they don't have a
Yeah.
pension plan.
Don't have the old plan.
Right,
That's what broke Detroit.
yeah.
We, see, I want to say this. We sat here and we really control the paychecks of the employees. That's our responsibility. Now, we've sat here, these two gentlemen right here, I don't know how many employees that we've had that's left here. We've had a bunch of them left because of more money or better working conditions or whatever. If the cost of living has gone up 5.9%, and we're proposing 3% to the employees, I will not vote for that, because I don't think that sitting here, I get a 5.9% raise, and I go out there and sit down with the boys in the garage, and they ask me how much percentage you get, Buster. I got 5.9. How much are we gonna get? We're gonna get 3%. I think we need to look at that figure real close.
Well, we give, there's a lot of years since I've been mayor, you didn't get no cost of living. You're talking about you.
Living through the Social Security, that's what
Yeah,
I'm speaking
yeah.
of. I'm not talking about just what I make to the city. I'm talking about what the government, the cost of living went up. I don't think we're doing the employees right if the cost of living is going up 5.9%. That's what you got. You got a 5.9% raise.
No, but we give city employees 3 point, for the last 10, 15 years. But cost of living has not gone up, but we give them $1,000. I mean, if you want to give more, I don't have a problem with that. We gave them $1,000, we give up their Christmas bonus.
Well, I don't see where you had any problem up in there. That's gonna cost us $12,000, the Christmas bonus.
Jessica, do you know like the difference between 3 and 5.9?
Yeah,
You
I
know
always
what
run
that-
both of the rates.
What that number might be, and, you know, if
Just payroll for 3 to 5.9 is just right at $70,000 increase in the budget, if I figured it correctly.
so,
Because
okay.
I don't know, I'm in a business that, we're having a heck of a time keeping employees first. And then when somebody leaves, it's that much harder to replace them with somebody that can step in. How much turnover have we had this year? Just in your department, Chuck, I was thinking about Chuck leaving, saying we have to
Chuck,
just.
you got Ashley, I don't know what it is about my department, but anyway, hopefully Savannah and John will stay a very long time.
We all have turnover.
But,
Fire
hey,
department,
That's,
and in the police department,
and we've got, we talk about Red Stag, and I'm glad they're here, but they're gonna be hiring people, and it's gonna be easy for somebody to say, sayonara, City of Sweetwater, I'm going here for more money. 3% cost of living raise for an employee, regardless of what we've done in the past, to me, that's in the past, 3% is unacceptable.
but, I mean, with the 2.9 and 70, as far as, what would that look like in adjustments?
So even at the full 5.9, that's the first number I ran, because I always take the cost of living from Social Security and I run the number, and then the mayor and I talk about it. So the first number, it still put us in the black. We would not have to use fund balance to do the full 5.9%. You would only have like $4,000 wiggle room, so it's gonna be much tighter, but you're not gonna have to use fund balance for it. I ran numbers on 3, 4, 5, and 5.9%.
But, I mean, obviously you're conservative for a reason, and we love you for doing that. But even at that, we think there's some additional, I don't say padding, but
I think revenues are gonna come in higher than I've estimated, and if they don't, I'll be surprised.
would still be good, is what I'm hearing.
if this, what I've looked at, I may be wrong, and I am, I apologize for taking their time, but, looks like the employees will get somewhere around $48 a week raise at 5.9.
Yeah, that's at the higher, at the higher rate of 5.9, it'd be $40 for an average employee.
Gonna get about $44 a week raise on the 3%.
No, it would be like,
That's it, what I'm thinking of is the difference.
oh, okay.
I just feel like the 3%, they deserve more than
On an average employee, so I'm using a salary of around 40,000. You probably have around $1,200 for a 3% raise, or $100 a month. And then for the 5.9%, it'd be more like $2,500 for an employee, which comes out to $48 a week.
So that could be an adjustment that we make moving
And you can do that during first reading in the May meeting, and then say, and we can print it all out for you, so you have it in front of you too.
Okay.
say this. Right now, the City of Sweetwater has got 4 employees in the street department. They can go anywhere and make more money than what they're making here. We got 4 of them, and I'll guarantee you, they can go anywhere and get a job, making more money than they are
but I can't adjust your Christmas bonus.
We haven't even talked about it, but it'd be nice, wouldn't it? Everybody get money.
Everybody's getting money except us, ain't we?
Well, I'll tell you,
I propose to-
if it gets us close to the red by putting that up, by putting higher rate on employees, if it's will get us close to the red, just keep my salary for the year and give it to my guys.
Mine too.
Okay, the last item on this slide is the merit pay program. It's already in the handbook, because we voted it in the handbook 10 years ago. We just never put the funding in for it. This budget in front of you in your folder does fund the merit pay program. This is what we were talking about when we did the pay scale study, and we realized there were some employees that were taking on extra responsibilities that maybe the department head and the commissioner wanted to be able to reward them for that in some way and not have to have everybody on the exact same pay scale. So basically, I ran numbers a couple different ways. The one that looked the most fair to me, and I'm just one opinion, was doing the gross salary in each department at 1.25% and putting that in a separate line item for merit pay. So when you look at each department's budget, you'll see their salary line item, and then you'll see one for merit pay. That is your wiggle room to use if you have an employee that's needing to do an extra duty that you need to assign to them, or if you want to promote someone and create a new job position within your department. It does not have to come before the full city board to be voted on if we vote it into the budget, because it's already in the handbook and it would already be in the budget. So that's the wiggle room that you have to restructure your departments and to award employees, hopefully based on merit.
Did you have a report that you could pull department head, everybody in the city, just whatever category they work in? I don't need to know, I don't want to know each employee. You got a report that we can see a characterization that what the price per hour is.
Yes. We could run hourly rates for you for each description.
If you do that for each one.
So I'm gonna move on, but y'all stop me if you have questions along the way. Okay, general fund expenditures continuing. Some of the bigger ticket items were increasing education funding by $30,000. That kind of seems to be the magic number these last few years. If we stay right around that percentage, we don't get in trouble with maintenance of effort, and it's not some huge amount that it kills us in one particular year. The library asked for $2,000 more, so that is included in this draft of the budget. It's fully funding the school's SRO program and also adding an additional full-time officer in the schools, with that primary contribution still being the city schools. So you won't see an increase in our budget, mostly because we haven't had to spend all of our budget lately. It does also include raising our SRO officers, and I'm embarrassed to say what their pay is now, so I'm not going to, but we'll raise them to $15 an hour. $15 an hour. They are part-time employees, so they don't get any benefits, but that will help us hopefully keep the part-time SRO officers that we have. And again, the schools pay the majority of that funding, and we pay a match on it. This fully funds all of our debt payments. That is listed in debt service, which is the last page of the general fund. It does continue to fund the National Main Street program. This is probably something we're gonna have to talk about at some point, but there are new requirements starting in 2023 for them to continue as a nationally certified Main Street organization. We have to have a full-time Main Street director. So we're gonna have to look at that program. The good news is we had already budgeted for a full-time Main Street director. It's been in the budget for 3 years still. We never took it out, so it's still in this draft. Haley basically has done it for the past 2 years for a couple $1,000s in bonuses. So we've saved a lot of money by not having a full-time Main Street director, but it is still in the budget. We're probably gonna have to fill that position this year. It cannot be the director of your board, and he is actually rolled off as a member, so I mean, you could ask him if he'd be, but it has to be a paid position. We have to report the salary and benefits. It has to be, they call it comparable to other salaries in our area, which we budget $36,000 a year for it. And that is in your budget. It's been in your budget the last couple of years. It's not an increase. It's.
Have we not got anybody just cause we can't find them? Or what?
We do have a candidate in mind, possibly a couple. Basically, they're from the interviews we did with Savannah. There was at least one person that seemed to fit better as a Main Street director than as an administrative assistant. So that may be something that we circle back around to after we get Savannah up and trained and look at
One
it.
of the things, Billy, is the reason that we have taken our time with this is the Main Street program to us in the planning department is such a coveted position based on the outcome of what has been able to happen in our downtown facility. We have poised this position, we've poised Main Street to accelerate the growth downtown, and I think the numbers speak for themselves.
Oh yeah, we're down to 0% vacancy rate on Main Street, which hasn't happened since we started the program.
So coupled with that, the reason we have taken our time is Haley and Jessica and Ashley when she was here and Chuck, it was really a team collaboration. But what Jessica's talking about is the requirements is 2 to 3 times what's coming, and it truly is gonna take a full time. So we kept that money available. Obviously, it rolled back in, but what's coming is gonna require that additional full time. But
Haley's actually at a meeting this week with Main Street. It's in West Tennessee. She has to go to 3 out of 4 every year, so she's at that meeting today. She's probably gonna find out more about what the new requirements will be, because it's not just they require us to have more staff, it's that they require that staff to be responsible for more. One example is if we have a small event, if we have the Sweetheart Stroll on Valentine's Day, we have to track how many people attended, what the restaurants estimated their revenue increases were. Like, there's multiple steps that are gonna have to be done now that we aren't currently.
they're almost turning that position into a federal accounting type position.
And they're gonna take that data, and use it to get more funding so they can give out more grants. I mean, that's gonna be the ultimate purpose of it.
Well, I'm asking this
Well, what they're gonna do
question,
is-
I don't know.
Oh, no, I
Until they run it.
well, what our team's purpose, to answer your question and the mayor's question, is we have fell into a pattern that has been working and has been profitable for our city. We will check the boxes, we will meet their requirements, but the team that we have in place and we keep looking for, Billy Wayne, is someone that knows how we do things, knows how it's working and how it benefits our city. So we're taking all the data that we have collected over the last few years, keeping those programs and implemented and in place. What we're gonna have to do, though, to truly meet the requirements is add this additional layer. But that's why we have been working with the team that's tried and true and have not hired, is we've just been so protective of.
And don't forget, we're not having to add a position for this. This is a
Right.
position we've had vacant for 3
That was
years,
gonna
so it's
be my
just
next
filling the
question.
old
No.
position.
You mentioned Haley in a couple meetings now. Is Haley full-time or is she half-time?
Haley is our full-time person in the office up front, but she has been doing double duty as Main Street Director for 2.5 years now. She organizes all the meetings, she sits at all the meetings, she does all the emails, she organizes the events and programs.
So what we've been doing is covering all of those bases with fewer employees. It's just what we're headed toward.
And during COVID, we couldn't really do the events and
Yeah.
stuff that we normally do with Main Street, so it was appropriate for that time to scale back a little bit.
But we're coming out of that.
What are we looking at then on, money on that position?
Well,
It's already in your budget,
It's
it's
already
the
in the
same
budget.
amount that's been in there. See, we had it in there last year too, we just didn't fill
But
the
you didn't
vacancy.
raise it.
Didn't
No.
raise it, it's
We didn't
exactly the
raise it.
same
So
as
you're
last
gonna
year.
find somebody for 36 level.
I don't know. The one person we interviewed, I think, would be interested, so
Would that
now
be
it's just
with
kind of,
benefits too?
plus benefits,
Yeah.
which was a big selling point for this person. This person wanted the benefits more than they wanted the salary, so. You know, and that may work out and it may not. We may have to re-advertise and do something else. The good thing about that person is since we already interviewed them a few, weeks ago, we don't have to re-advertise. We could pull that.
when does, I cannot remember, I apologize, the new requirements.
Not until January.
That's
So
what-
we don't have to have the person officially hired until January. And we said, can we not just use Haley? It works so well for us. Can we not keep Haley at 20 hours a week and let someone else do 20 hours a week and have just add a part-time?
But John might want to put on 20 more.
And they said, if you do that, you have to keep a weekly timesheet and turn it in of how many hours they worked on Main Street and what the activity was. But I did talk to the state director right after this happened, her representative. And they feel like this can be a good thing, that they do think they're gonna get more funding out of it because of it. So, as long as Main Street stays good for Sweetwater, we'll keep doing Main Street.
If, Hagley's been doing a good job at it, right there's one I think I'd be taking a picture of.
Yeah, but I need her more in the office. I need her in the
part of the
office.
discussion.
That's no problem if you find somebody going off.
I'll take this time to interject, and you guys may be down here every single weekend. I'm a workaholic, so I come out of my office Saturday about 11 or 11:30. There is not one empty parking stall in the parking lot across the way. There's not one empty parking stall up and down Main Street. There are people everywhere. You can walk through the parking lot. I do this just to check my math. Any given weekend, I count 6 to 7 different states in our town. People are finding us based on everything that's been set up.
And as far as Haley goes, I can't say enough good about her. She is wonderful, and she has managed this program through the most unfun times of Main Street. It has not been fun to be in Main Street for the last couple of years. I don't think that she will totally be hands-off with it, even if we hire a full-time person. I think she will still kind of be directing that to some degree, but her problem is she's too good at everything she does, so
But
we need her to
Let me
do
ask you
places.
this, Sam. How many people we got living upstairs in town now?
Well, Mayor, you've got a few in your.
Well,
The reason why I'm asking is about the parking spaces.
Well, the thing about it in the parking spaces, as far as the ones that I know about, is just like the Airbnb, and I think they've got 2 in each one. So there would be four rooms, but on any given night there'll be 2 to 4 cars, you know, in front. I don't know of any other than the Oddfellows Lodge.
They park in the police parking.
But, I mean, and they always leave and go to work during the day, so even at that, by the time I'm in, there might be 5 or 6 cars that I see, but typically, it's more or less on the hospitality side, which is hotel type. That's in front of there, but they're gone by the time the business is open. And then, just like the mayor said, when I get in, they're usually parked up the side street. So that's one of the things that's really cool is even the residents that are staying there, they're helping out by not parking in front of the businesses that are open, like a coffee shop.
Do you foresee that becoming a problem? And the reason why I'm asking, you got all that scrub building in top, there's nothing in there. But they could make nice apartments in there.
Oh yeah, and the thing about it is the timing of it all, because you would think if folks are in an apartment, 9 times out of 10, they're gonna be working, so it's the after hours, you know.
You gotta go up 19 to 20, 24 steps in that scrub building too, though.
Yeah, that's true.
But, I mean, that's something in the master plan way back. Did Daniel look at parking and additional areas?
Yeah,
I think if we look in the budget on the income side and go to the tourist, you can see what's happening in Sweetwater. We sat here and talked about the tourism. We had this room high full of motel owners. I've not saw one of them down here yet. After we
we, and when I say we collectively, this council, this room, every department, plus Main Street, they know us. I mean, Jessica has presented 4 or 5 different times to state committees from Sweetwater, so kudos.
We're doing something right.
We're doing something right.
We might have to start telling them how terrible we are so they quit coming.
No.
Okay, moving on, but stop me if you have questions. Legal department, we put it just in as the contract that we just looked at a couple weeks ago, so there's no changes to that. Executive department, which is elected officials, the only increase is the Christmas bonus difference. We didn't have any operational increases in my department, only whatever the raise ends up being. Liquor administration, data processing, which is our computer contract with local government, and administrative hearing officers, we didn't change anything in that, it's the same as last year's budget. The building departments, the operational expenses are the same except for a decrease in the SPD expansion because they've done 2 phases of that, and we're trying to get to a 3rd phase. It's hard with contractors and building supplies and all of that, but we have left $50,000 in there for next year to finish out that project, and then hopefully SPD will be completely redone. We also put $8,000 in for cameras at the depot that covers a majority of the downtown area. We're going to have them zoom out further to where they can catch, for festivals and events, for different things going on, they can get a bigger scope. Tourism department, we didn't make any operational changes except for that train car grant project. We did apply for and receive an extension on that, by the way. It was supposed to expire in April, so because of there's lead time on the elevator of 12 weeks. So we knew we wouldn't, even if we got the bid in today and voted on it, we wouldn't be able to have it done. So they've given us an extension on that. General government, which is our 41,990 account, we did increase the SVCA contribution. We are still giving $12,000 for salary, just like we did last year, but we added back the $3,000 for programming that we used to always give them, so that's an increase. And then also we added funding to purchase software to track assets. That helps the accounting, but it also can be used for evidence collection in the police department. All departments will be using it. Either the department head can use it or we will use it from an accounting perspective, but it'll be used to track inventory basically for all departments.
Are we gonna hire another SVCA person?
We do not have to, because Tim Rasmussen is acting as their employee, and SVCA is using the contribution we give them, $12,000, to pay him as their employee. So we don't have him on our 941s anymore. He's not on our work comp. He's not technically a city employee. He's a private employee from SVCA.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, the police department, we have 3 changes. The first one, and you'll see this on every single slide, is an increase in the fuel budget by 30%. Now, I wish I could tell you that I know that 30% is going to be enough or too much or whatever, but I don't have a clue. So what I did was I thought, what is a reasonable number to put in without making it so ridiculous that we end up not being able to do the capital projects that we voted on a couple of weeks ago in the capital improvement plan? So I settled on 30% for each department. It's a crap shot, y'all. It may be 50% by the time we get it. I mean, I don't know. Or it could drop back down to 10% increase. But we have enough fund balance that an increase in fuel is not going to kill us, so I'm not too worried about that. But I'll entertain any suggestions you all have. Funding for 2 vehicles in the police department, one of which is the truck that we were supposed to get ordered a couple years ago that we can't get the inventory for, so I've just rolled that amount over again and budgeted for 1 new vehicle in addition to that truck. Equipment funding for car and body cameras, which is slightly higher than what it was last year, about $10,000, I think, but not by much. And that's just to cover the price increase as to what that equipment is probably going to go up. Fire department, fuel increase by 30%. The equipment budget, we moved it to $25,000. And then, of course, in March, we voted to add a additional full-time employee, so that, of course, is included in the budget proposed. Safety department, which is basically random drug testing and safety training, there's no changes in that budget. Planning and development department, we have it in this year, not in the budget, but we're paying it out already. Contract payments to Tony Wilson to continue his building inspections. So that is included. It also has $3,000 for the East Tennessee Development District contract, just like we paid this year. It includes a slight increase in the training budget of around $500. Since we have had so much turnover in that department and we have 2 new employees we need to get trained, we thought we needed a little more funding for that. 30% increase in fuel budget. And the vehicle that we have in this year's budget, we don't know if we're gonna be able to get the inventory in before July 1st, so we've budgeted it for next year also. Obviously, if John is able to get that vehicle this year in before June 30th, we will not need to spend that $40,000 next year. But since we don't know when we're gonna be able to get it, I had to put it in both years. This is the world we live in, people. Okay, recreation and parks, 30% increase in fuel. The funding for the dog park dash grant is here in this budget. You'll also flip to the revenue side and you'll see the revenue coming in for that dog park dash grant. I gave them several dates of times to do a check presentation. They finally signed off on all our initial packet that I sent in a couple weeks ago, and they're ready to make a check presentation, so I'll keep you all informed about that. In improvements, we have funding. Lamar's requested to put a new playground at Engelman Park, one for older age children. And then the next phase of cameras, which we've been consistently budgeting, it's no more money for the cameras than what it was, but we put some in this year, probably for Engelman Park or the Dove Park. That's not quite fully built out yet. And then we'll also be doing about $5,000 worth of playground resurfacing, hopefully while we're installing that new playground to just kind of patch up the other places that have had problems. Museum and tree board departments are exactly the same as last year. We've already talked about the $30,000 increase to education. Hopefully that will meet maintenance of effort and we won't have to make any changes to that. But just as a reminder, there's always a chance the state will come back and say, this doesn't meet the maintenance of effort formula, so you all have to increase it. That's only happened once in about 10 years, so hopefully we'll stay ahead of it. Economic development, we did put $30,000 in there under infrastructure expansion, just because so much is happening, and I don't know when we might end up needing money to do something. Last year we ended up spending $15,000 for the engineering that was done on the I-75 Commerce Park property, so there's probably going to consistently be needs like that that come up, so that's just, we may not end up spending a dime of it, but it's in there in case we need some of it. Main Street we've already talked about. The main increase in operating expenses is the operating supplies line. We are going to go to a Billboard Program. The guy that organized it spoke at our conference, and he's also a National Main Street speaker. He'll be here Wednesday to do one-on-one training with our business owners, and part of that was we got a good deal on a marketing program for him. He will run the website, he will run several things for us, so, and it's for, I want to say it was like $2,900 a year, so we added that amount into the Main Street program. Operating supplies. We are going to apply for several upcoming grants. Most of them start applications in June. We don't know if we got any of those. We haven't even applied for them yet. So I did not put any grant funding in there. It's possible that I'll have to come to you partway through the year and say, hey, we got this grant, so we need a 10% match or we need a 20% match. I put $5,000 in there for matching funds just in case we need to use it, but we will be applying for grants for them. So this is the final overview on general fund. Total revenues are just above $8 million. Total expenditures are at 7.9, and we would estimate returning around $102,000 to fund balance. Again, if you change the COLA, that's going to change multiple things, including taxes. So that would be, I think when I ran it, it was around $4,000 returning to fund balance. Either way, we're not taking anything out of fund balance. These are our actual beginning fund balances because I got the audit a few weeks ago. So as of July 1st, we started with $4.3 million just in the general fund. For the first time this year, I had over $5 million in the checking account at one point, and I had to transfer it. I was really excited about it. And we're estimating ending fund balance June 30th at $4.8 million. We've done several things to save money this year. Lamar has not replaced his person in the Parks and Rec department yet. He's gone several months without that, so that saved us some salary. There's been a couple little things like that, but I do think we're going to be returning probably $300,000 to $400,000 back to fund balance this year. And part of that, of course, is an increase in revenues. So we'll continue to grow our fund balance at the end of this year, unless there's some major thing that happens. These are other funds, so I'm going to start with State Street Aid. We are experiencing a slight increase in gasoline tax revenue, so that's good. Just so everybody knows, it's not because we get money based on where people buy gas. That is a statewide tax, and it's split out on per capita, so it's based on your census numbers. So actually for gas, it really doesn't matter where you buy gas, as long as it's in Tennessee. Capital equipment purchase, $250,000 for a dump truck, which Buster had requested earlier during the capital equipment process. We do have some expenditure increases. It looks like we're spending way more than we did last year, but all three of those things are related to grants that we've gotten for sidewalks. Multimodal only has a 5% match. The STP project to repay Hawkins and Linwood is a 20% match. And the TAP grant to do the sidewalk along North Main Street is a 20% grant match. So it looks like our expenditures are really high, but keep in mind we're actually only paying 20% of that. We do have to, write it for the whole amount, but if you look at the revenue side, you'll see the reimbursement from the grants coming in. Drug fund, revenues and expenditures remain the same, and we've got around just under $73,000 in there right now in the drug fund. Our LEA fund, the revenue, I've estimated it to be the same. Expenditures for equipment repair any of the expenditures are related to whatever items are donated to us, which is basically what the LEA takes is donated items. The library fund, we put a budget in exactly as what was requested by our library board, which included $2,000 extra from the city. ECD fund, minimal revenue on interest, like I think I budgeted $100, maybe it probably won't even be that much. Fund balance is being held for the I-75 Commerce Park gas extension. Whenever there's a burden hand on that, or then who is coming there, we can then do the gas extension with SUV. Sanitation fund. I know y'all are curious about this. We actually have a maximum in our contract of a 4% increase. So, they could only raise it 4%, which is $10,000 a year. So that will go into effect April 1st, but it's not going to break the bank. We did end up, because it's increased a little bit, and we haven't increased the garbage fee in a while, I ended up having to remove landfill expense from the sanitation fund and putting it back in the general fund. It is reflected in the street department line 295, just like it was before we started taking it out of sanitation. I've only got about $20,000 in that sanitation fund now. So the state wants you to keep a fund balance in there. Worst case scenario, we'll send a transfer from general fund over to sanitation. But even with the increase, I think we have enough revenue to offset the garbage contract, just not enough to offset the landfill expense where we go and pick up things curbside and take it to the dump. So, tourism fund, revenues come in higher than projected. The hotels have recovered much more quickly than we thought it was going to. On the expenditure side for the proposed budget, you'll see several new line items. One, we've talked about starting a mural program. There are several grants out there for murals that we've applied for, so if we get some of those, the matching funds would come out of the tourism fund for hotel motel tax instead of out of the general fund. Also, a billboard program, we've talked about putting a billboard at the interstate, so I put funding in there, assuming we do find a good billboard that we want to purchase to advertise Sweetwater. Also, I put that tourism fund could contribute to festivals and events. That way, if we end up short or we don't have quite enough money to cover from raised and donations, we can pay for it out of tourism. That seems like a good expenditure for tourism money to go towards. The beginning fund balance this year was $53,000, which was a lot more than I thought it was going to be. And even with all the conference expenses we had this year, which obviously was unusual and probably won't happen again, we still think we're going to have an increase in fund balance at the end of the year. So I think there'll be more than $44,000 at the end of the year. The home grant fund, Mitch gave us a great update today. We still have one full home build, which we're going to do the mobile home for, one rehabilitation. We've got just under $100,000 to spend. There is no match on this. It's 0% match. Hopefully we won't have to contribute anything on it other than time. John did research and found a mobile home to fit the dimensions. We're going to rebid it. We'll bring it forward to the board, which Mitch explained today. We think we'll remain within the budget. The upcoming budget will reflect the closing of this grant. We only have until the end of December, so this will be the last time that you guys have to see the home grant in the budget. COVID fund. This is brand new. So because of the money we got from the federal government, which we've already received the first tranche of, which is $874,563, we spent $70,000 of that so far on premium pay. That we did find out that's going to be 100% reimbursable. They will reimburse 100% of those bonuses that we did. In fact, I can go ahead and transfer money and I just haven't done the transaction yet. I have this $874,000. Really, Sonia has this $874,000 sitting in an LGIP account, so it's totally separate from all of our other cash in the bank. Plus, we put it in a whole separate fund, which is Fund 311. So when you get your monthly bill pay report starting July 1st, you'll get an extra fund printed off of that, which will reflect this amount. So we're going to get another tranche in the future, and I can't remember if it's in 2023, I think. I didn't put it in the budget this year to receive it, so I think it's the next budget year. This is kind of what we've semi-committed to so far. Water infrastructure for the utility board, the communication equipment for police and fire radios, the grants to nonprofits. there were like 4 prongs that they allowed us to spend this money on, and one of them was tourism, and one of them was economic development. And both of those are kind of a wide open field. It's like as long as it's going to one of those things, there will be less scrutiny on it. So that's why we wanted to do around, I think it was around 100,000 by the time. We can also pay for the marketplace lease out of that money instead of paying for it out of general funds. So I thought that was a good way to spend it. And then we're paying for East Tennessee Development District administration costs. Obviously, this doesn't yet include buying the building downtown because it's not for sale yet. So that would probably be that second tranche of money for that expenditure. And that is all still able to be discussed. None of that's, written in stone yet for the COVID expenditures. Also in your folder, you'll see the capital improvement plan, which we passed on March 4th, and that's a copy of the final plan. It also has a revenue forecast for sales tax and property tax, so you can look and see what those actual numbers have been for the last 5 years, just so you kind of know where I'm coming up with those numbers. It also, I still need to add the SUV and BOE budgets, Board of Ed. So I'll be getting those in. Okay, perfect. The ordinance, you'll notice there's no numbers in it. I have done this the wrong way every year. I have tried to plug it in now, and then we change something, and I end up having to go back and do it. So I'm not putting those numbers in the final ordinance until we've actually voted on it, and I know that's the end. And then debt schedules that the state requires, they'll be added later. I don't have them in there yet. We talked about the retirement rate. When we were giving 7.1%, we overfunded it significantly, so we reduced it to 3%, which was still 2% above what the state actuary recommended. Now they're recommending we do 2.99% because we have an unfunded pension liability of $28,000 and change. I'm recommending 5% so we can get rid of that unfunded liability and kind of stay ahead of the game on that, and that's what the numbers are in this budget. I would kind of like to ask y'all if y'all are ready to say, yeah, you want to do the 5%, because if you are, I'll go ahead and send that back into the state and lock this into it. If there's opposition to it, we can discuss it again in April. Okay, I'll go ahead and return that form then. That's it. Does anybody have any questions that we didn't talk about?
Howard, you're so awesome.
Good report. So we're doing pretty good with a little over 5 mil.
Yep.
That ain't bad.
After we pass the budget, then we employ you going
Julie Fitch is a very efficient human being, and she's been an excellent addition to our office, so I think if I can get Haley back at least 30 hours a week instead of her doing Main Street so much, I'll be fine for a while.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Any more comments? Thank you, Jessica.
Good job. Thank you.
Appreciate all you do. We will now have a resolution. This is agenda review. We will have a resolution on the Tdot bridge project. We have plans here. If anyone would like to review those, you're welcome to do so. You can see John. Tdot is funding the project, but they are asking for a resolution of support from the city prior to beginning the right-of-way, and we can have that Monday night, right? So is everybody okay with that?
Move the resolution be signed.
Okay. Anybody want to second those first? Everybody for it? Aye?
Aye.
Resolution. We have ordinance number 998, which will update our building codes. Most of you know we have to stay within 6 years of the state codes in order to receive a good ISO rating for code and buildings, and we are behind. This ordinance does update to 2018 codes with several exceptions. It has been reviewed by John, Chuck, Commissioner Mosier, and anything you need to add to that?
We gotta get it passed.
And John has drafted a ordinance of number 998 on the animal control. John, you want to review?
We just had too many repeat offenders, dogs at large, and it's the same dogs, the same owners over and over. And primarily this provides greater enforcement penalties, including not giving the dogs back. And also allows the city judge some more alternatives in which that he can take care of getting these dogs out of the city. That's primarily it. It also provides for when these dogs are repeat offenders on the running at large, that they're not getting the dogs back in addition to paying the fine and the court costs and the boarding fees. They're not getting them back unless they've paid all of the fees and the fines that they ran up, and court costs that they ran up on the earlier times, because lots of times they're just not paying them. So it takes care of a lot of those, and I'll run it by everybody that has anything to do with it, including the dog catcher, because he's the one out there having to do it. And I think we've included everything everybody has recommended.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. In your packet is a bulletin from TML concerning some legislative news we are encouraged to oppose. It would enable property owners to feel that the city rezoning neighborhood properties has damaged their home value and they can sue. The main difference in this bill makes the plan retroactive for rezoning up to 3 years past, and it also defines the damage as 10%, where in the past, the property had to be devalued significantly. Is anyone interested in passing a resolution to oppose or authorize a letter to our representative? I think we all ought to be writing our representative. Jess, is everybody in favor of writing the representative? This has come back and haunt some decisions made at the planning commission, very much so. And so we need to write, would it be Bell and Lowell, write them a letter. Everybody good with this? Do I hear a motion on this resolution?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, motion made, second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you. I've also included July 4th fireworks contract in the packet for your review. If you've noted why they've gone up on us again this year, which is always go up every year. And so we've got that sent in. Is everybody happy with moving along with July 4th celebration? All in favor of that, aye? Next month, I am going to present the Distinguished Citizen Award. It's going to be unusual this year. I am presenting it to the Sweetwater Hospital doctors, nurses, caretakers, and employees. And to the other one, we're going to give it to the first responders, our firemen, our policemen that's helped us through this pandemic. So I'll need a representative, you're John, to accept this award. My committee met, that we meet all this, and it was 100%. The hospital will have a representative here for that, and we want to recognize you guys for the job that you all have done. This pandemic has been something else, and you all, you've went into it, you've been exposed to it, and we want you to know how much we appreciate it. Firemen and the police officers, Tim and his crew, and just everybody. So that'll be coming up in May, if we get Phil Roy to get those flags for us.
He's a Minuteman, he can handle it.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else need to be brought up at workshop?
I just wanna ask one question, cause I don't know if I missed it or what. There was some discussion about raises. What was the final decision on that?
We've not made one yet.
I'll run the numbers to you all and give you in your packet what it is at the 5.9, and then whoever makes a motion, just put it in your motion, which version of the budget, and that, we won't need to have that voted on until the May meeting.
But it's 30% in here.
Correct.
Anything else? Thank you. We are adjourned.